Movement unit, our last big show, which covers the Wilson years, and that has to do with President Woodrow Wilson. Well, to start with this, though, we need to start back with Taft. So Taft wins the presidency in 1908. He was Roosevelt's Secretary of War and a personal friend of Roosevelt. Taft, when he wins the presidency in 1908, seemed to share Roosevelt's progressive ideas, and the focus here is on the word seemed. Roosevelt gets Taft total support in the campaign. Taft's on the right and Roosevelt on the left, pictured here. Remember, Roosevelt was a hero of the progressives and was really the leader in the progressive movement. Taft defeats William Jennings Bryan for president. Taft, Republican. He wins the blue states pictured there, all of the northern states, and wins a significant amount of both the popular vote and the electoral college. And then we start running into trouble for Taft. He raised tariffs, which protected some American industries, keeping prices high for consumers. And please remember, progressives did not like high tariffs. The Payne-Aldrich tariff is what it was known as. Progressives wanted lower tariffs to keep prices on consumer goods low. Taft signed the bill, calling it the best tariff bill the Republican Party ever passed. And that really angered many of the progressives. The next situation was when Ballinger, as Secretary of the Interior, approves the sale of a huge amount of Alaskan timberland to a coal company. When the government launched an antitrust investigation into the company that bought the coal rights, Ballinger, the Secretary of the Interior, blocked the investigation. Gifford Pinchot, the head of the U.S. Forestry Service, claimed Ballinger favored private interest over conservation, which was probably accurate. Taft fired Pinchot for being a whistleblower, and this angered many progressives, especially Teddy Roosevelt. It made him very angry, and it caused a split between Taft and Roosevelt. So at the midterm elections of 1910, Roosevelt campaigned for progressive candidates who opposed Taft. So he splits with the party. He splits with the guy that he had just supported 2 years previously to help get elected president. And he's actively campaigning against him now in 1910. Teddy Roosevelt pushed for tough new laws that would protect workers, ensure public health, and regulate business, which he called his new nationalism. Republicans lost control of the House of Representatives for the first time in 16 years, thanks in large part to what Roosevelt did in campaigning. So in 1912, 2 years down the road from that, Roosevelt decides to run for president again. Remember, Taft is the sitting president of the United States, and he's the head of the Republican Party, and Roosevelt wants to replace him on the ballot to get elected president. But Taft controlled the Republican Party machinery, which is very typical for the president, the sitting president. And what's pictured here is a ticket that was needed to get into the convention. And Taft, whose picture, McKinley's picture is on the ticket, but this is the actual ticket that you needed to get in. Taft made it so only his supporters could get in to the convention, blocking many potential Roosevelt people from getting into the convention. The Republican machine refused to admit Roosevelt supporters. As pictured as a cartoonist sympathetic to Roosevelt claimed that Taft and his supporters were driving the party to destruction. They're pushing this elephant, which is the symbol of the Republican Party, off a cliff. It actually turned out to be very accurate. Taft gets the nomination for the Republican Party because the Roosevelt people weren't allowed to be there. Roosevelt forms his own party known as the Progressive Party, which they nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. because Roosevelt said he felt as fit or as strong as a bull moose. Roosevelt's Progressive Party knew nationalism was the main focus, and he brought back this idea of a square deal, which we talked about in the last big show. But because of Roosevelt splitting the Republican vote, Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, gets elected president. Now, the blue states pictured here goes to Wilson. So it looks like he wins this huge majority, but I want you to look carefully at both the popular vote and not the electoral college vote, because he won the vast majority of that, but look at the popular vote. So Wilson wins 42% of the popular vote. 42% of Americans who voted for Wilson, not a majority. Taft got 23%, and Roosevelt got 27.5%. If Roosevelt had gotten the nomination, he would have had all the Taft votes and he would have won the election by kind of a large margin. If you remember the Electoral College, whichever candidate gets the most votes in that state gets all of the state's Electoral College votes. Well, because there's 3 people running, the Roosevelt, who did win a fair number of states, as you picture here, Pennsylvania and Michigan and Minnesota, South Dakota, Washington, and California. He wins a fair number of states, but he would have won many, many more states had Taft not run. But regardless, because of this third party, the Progressive Party, and the splitting of the Republican vote, Woodrow Wilson gets elected president, the Democrat. He is a progressive, though, also, because as I told you at the beginning of the unit, progressivism is not just about a political party, it's from both parties, and passes many pieces of progressive legislation. The Federal Trade Commission Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, Working Men's Compensation Act, and what ends progressivism, what really puts an end to this whole movement, was World War I. And that would begin in 1914, but the United States wouldn't get involved until 1917. And that puts an end to progressivism, and that's the end of our big show.